Keep track of that one. The people in the last day are going to be disobedient. Paul's thinking, why in the world would anyone do that? Ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, the worst possible people you can imagine, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, have nothing to do with them. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And here we find out the root underneath everything else that is wrong with our pursuit of pleasure. It's this: pleasure can replace God. In your life, pleasure has the power to replace God. God has wired you that your number one motivator in life is what makes you feel good, is pleasure. And if it is improperly used in your life, it will lead you to pleasure instead of the God who wired you to experience the pleasures of this world. And so I think this can be our momentum principle. Let's write this one down. This is the one we're going to stick with. Pursuit of pleasure leads me to emptiness, but pursuing God leads to endless pleasure. Pursuing God leads to endless pleasure. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." The desires of my heart. Today I'm going to take great pleasure in laying on my couch, a soft place to sit, and watching my obnoxiously gigantic television. And I'm going to watch high-definition football signals, and I'm going to eat junk food, and I'm going to drink sugar water, and then more sugar water, and maybe even some coffee. And I'm going to enjoy myself this afternoon, but maybe I need to do so attentive to my heart and paying attention to what's going on in there. We live in a society that does really weird things with pleasures. A peach, a good peach, a ripe peach is unbelievable. But it's fuzzy. And not only is it fuzzy, it's time-consuming. And not only is it time-consuming, because, you got to eat the whole thing, and you got to go to the store and you got to buy fresh ones, and all that. It's much easier if I have like a drink that is just filled with sugariness, and I can just slug that one down. I can go through like 3 or 4 Cokes in the time that it takes me to prepare, wash, eat, a peach and savor it, right? This is what we do in our society. We take something that God made that is already really good, and we refine and refine and refine and refine and refine until we take what we like the best and we make sure that there's only the stuff that we like. Do you have any idea how much fiber is in a sugar cane? I've had one once. It's worse than celery. My goodness, it's like eating bamboo. And yet we take that for some reason and we refine and refine and refine until we get this purified sugar, and then we use that to refine and refine our other flavors into being something that is only pleasure. Diet soda makes me sick, conceptually as well as physically, because it's one more example of us refining, refining, and refining until we get to a place where the only cost is pleasure. That's what we want. We just want to feel good. So how do we deal with this? Does that mean we stop cutting the crusts off our sandwiches? Does that mean that we stop using bleached flour and go back to regular flour? Does that mean we have to go back to wheat and like mash it ourselves and grind it ourselves? Does that mean that when we go through all this process that we're somehow getting away from God's will for us? We're refining things too much? Mixed drinks are more refined than a regular beer, and beer is more refined than wine. That kind of stuff. Is that wrong to go through that process of refining stuff? Listen, I'm going to come down and I'm going to give you one statement, one thought, one mental picture to make sure your pursuit of pleasure in this world does not become your everything. One thought to make sure that you are a person who can receive with satisfaction the pleasures of this world the way they should be received from God. And here it is. Here's your question. Does my greatest pleasure come from the experience of the gift or the knowledge of the giver? Does my greatest pleasure come from the experience of the gift or the knowledge of the giver? I'll illustrate this. How many of you have ever been to an art museum? Yeah? How many of you enjoyed it? Okay, some of you. Think of something beautiful you've seen. Some work of art. Maybe it was a statue, maybe it was the Mona Lisa, maybe it was a weird Picasso. For me, I really like the abstract weirdness of Mondrian. I think Jackson Pollock is off his rocker, so some of the abstract stuff I don't like. Some of the stuff like Picasso I really kind of enjoy. I'm into that. I like that. I can go and I can sit in front of some of that stuff and just stare at it and appreciate it. And I realize what I'm doing there in that moment is I'm appreciating the experience of the moment, right? But I want to show you a picture that I got. This picture was given to me 3 years ago by a little girl named Beth Shackelford and her sister Rose. Some of you know Greg and Laura. We were at the Long Center in town here. Our church was meeting at the Long Center, and I was leading worship on this particular Sunday. And we played a song that goes, "You make everything glorious," and it's kind of a happy, kind of fun song. And all the kids were in there, and they were enjoying the time. And they had free time during their Kidopolis program back then. We called it Kid Zone. They had free time, and they decided to draw me this picture. And here's me, Mr. Mickels, spelled Mickels. And then there's Len right here, a guitarist that we had before, and there's a drummer we had before there. And then there's this screen over here that some of you have seen, and there's like the sunrise coming up over there, and it says, "You make everything glorious." And there are these musical notes that are floating through the sky over here. And then this was her depiction of God and his son Jesus. And there's a little heart here and another little word over here that says love. And I've saved it for 3 years. And I'll be honest with you, it's not because of how it looks. It's because of how it came to me. It's because of who made it. This whole folder here is filled with pictures that have been drawn by the kids in this church and by my own kids, just thanking me for doing the things that I've done and for just being the person that I'm trying to be. And all of this stuff is far more valuable to me than any time I've ever been in a museum. And it's all because of who gave it and how it came to me. Pleasure is something that God has designed you for. But don't chase it down like it's something to be had in and of itself. Don't chase down the experience because the experience is somehow by itself what you're looking for. Instead, stand back with open arms and say, "God, thank you for bringing these things into my life." And allow the enjoyment of pleasurable things in this world to bring you closer to God. Because the pursuit of pleasure leads only to emptiness. But God himself, the pursuit of God, can lead us to places of endless pleasure. Would you pray with me?